to a brand new episode of Coming Distractions brought to you by the Nerdpocalypse podcast. I'm your host, Jay. Okay, guys, let's talk about Mission Impossible Fallout. So this is the sixth Mission Impossible film. This franchise seems to just keep getting better and better and better. In my opinion, they're all pretty good to great, minus Mission Impossible 2, which was not good. So this is directed by Christopher McQuarrie, who directed Rogue Nation, which was the previous one. Of course, it's starring Tom Cruise, Ving Rhames, Simon Pegg. Rebecca Ferguson is back. She played Ilsa in the previous one. She's the first. She's one of the first sort of main action co-stars to come back that weren't on the original IMF team. So the general premise of this film is that there is a group. There's a group of bad guys called the Syndicate, who have their sort of leader, Solomon Lane, who was a villain in the previous movie. He returns through a number of circumstances. I'm not going to spoil anything in this review, but he returns, and the Syndicate has a sort of an offshoot group called the Apostles, and they end up stealing 3 pieces of plutonium that they're planning on detonating somewhere in the world. That's the basic plot, without giving away too much. Ethan Hunt, played by Tom Cruise, and his team are tasked in getting that plutonium back, as they lost it originally in the beginning of the film due to Ethan trying to protect his team. So the big factor here is that a guy named August Walker is brought in, played by Henry Cavill, aka Superman from the DC movies. He's brought in as a sort of CIA assassin. He's tasked to sort of join aside their team to make sure they get the plutonium back. And if something goes wrong, then he uses his assassin skills to take out whoever he needs to, including Ethan Hunt and his team. So all that being said, what I liked about this film is it does everything the best Mission Impossible movies do. Up until this film, Rogue Nation was my favorite. This is now my favorite because these movies they know exactly what they are. They are Tom Cruise vanity pieces in a lot of ways. And I don't say that as a negative. I think he absolutely runs this franchise in the best way possible. The visuals are great. The sort of world traveling, globe trotting that happens in the film is awesome. A decent amount of it takes place in London. The action set pieces are exactly what you come to expect in these movies. Cruise, as far as I understand, there's a halo jump in this. He did that halo jump like 100 times just because he wanted to get it right. It's a great scene. It looks amazing. Then there's what you saw in the trailer, the helicopter scene where he's hanging on the rope and what have you. That scene, he did the actual stunt for that. There's, of course, Tom Cruise is running in this. And, you know, that's sort of the going joke about Tom Cruise is like he's got to run in his movies and everything. But the way in which McQuarrie handles that and the way they sort of lean into that is really some of the most beautiful shot scenes in the film. I mean, him just sort of running across this area in London over these rooftops as the camera stays, he has one camera stayed fixed on Cruise as Cruise is moving, and then you kind of get the background as it's going by, and it's this really amazing tracking shot. It's actually one of the best scenes I've seen in a Mission Impossible movie. Again, the action beats are really just over the top in exactly that level of craziness that you want, and that sort of not frenetic shooting, but just wild action. There's a scene that's in the trailer that you get a glimpse of like a fight in a bathroom, which might be one of the most brutal hand-to-hand fight scenes I've seen in a long time. Like, actually very impressive. I can't say enough positive things about the movie. It's just a really good time. If I had to give a negative, it's 2.5 hours long, which is pretty long. I don't know how that really truly compares with the other Mission Impossible movies. I imagine Rogue Nation is about around the same. It doesn't feel like it's dragging or anything, but it's definitely a long movie, and you're kind of like, okay, you know, we're going through our paces, but it never feels like, oh God, like this is just a slog. Like, it really doesn't feel like that. There are very few moments that it's actually really slowed down at all. there's a couple of twists and turns in the story that are really, some of them are a lot easier to pick up. There is a twist that you will not see coming at all. I would say that it's not necessary to see the other Mission Impossible movies, but if you have, there's a couple of things in this movie that are for you, right? It's like, all right, you've been here since the beginning. You understand the lore of this franchise. There's a couple things that really do stick out. But there is something that happens in the movie that literally, I looked around the theater at that moment when this like thing is revealed, and I could see people sitting up in their seat. Like they were super invested in the story, which says a lot for an action movie, right? Like you would think, well, it's just the action beats and who cares? Just get to the next thing. But the story is actually pretty good. The way they bring Ilsa back is really good, and it makes sense, and it's interesting. It's nice to see Ving Rhames and Simon Pegg back. They're always good, sort of a comedy beat to Tom Cruise is not super serious, but like fairly serious Ethan Hunt. Yeah, it's a wonderfully shot action movie, and it's exactly what you need at this time of year. So it's not a comic book movie, so it's kind of nice to see there still being big ticket action movies that people give a damn about, and that the people working on them clearly give a damn about. Henry Cavill as August Walker. Look, that guy hasn't had a chance to really shine, unfortunately, I would argue in the DCEU, outside of Man of Steel. But that guy's a legitimate action star. I mean, he puts in some serious work in this movie. You know, he's a very straight-laced, like AJ squared away kind of military guy. But yeah, he's got some moments that are pretty dope. That bathroom scene with him is pretty brutal. But he does a very good job in this. So I look forward to seeing him in a lot of other things, not just comic book movies. Look, if I have to give it a score, it's a 4.5 out of 5. Again, it runs a little long. It could probably afford to be maybe 15 minutes shorter, but all in all, it nails it. It really does. It makes you want to see more Mission Impossible movies. At 6 movies, I don't feel bored by this franchise whatsoever. I'm really here for what the hell real stunts is Tom Cruise going to do next, because he seems to be able to just top himself every time. Last time in Rogue Nation, he held his breath really for 6 minutes to do that insane underwater scene. In this one, he does a number of like aerial things that are just wild, and yeah, he's nailing it. This is his franchise. He owns it. He is still a legitimate action star in his 50s, which is crazy to say. But look, if you like the Mission Impossible movies, it's a 4.5 out of 5. If you just want to see a good action movie, it's great. It's a great time. It's a little bit more brutal than I recall the other Mission Impossible movies being, but not to the point where it's like, oh, you can't, like, you know, it's rated R, you know, like some hard R movie. It's not like that. But there are some like fight scenes and things like that. Again, the scene in the bathroom is a prime example that are pretty brutal. But in my opinion, are brutal in the right ways, which is these guys are elite spies and assassins. They should be able to fight. So other than that, no real qualms about the movie, except it runs a little long. But besides that, Christopher McQuarrie nailed it. Tom Cruise nailed it. Ving Rhames, Simon Pegg, all of them. Like, everybody is great. Everybody gets a moment. There's a good amount of light enough moments to break up sort of the heaviness of the story, but not to the point where it undercuts it. So again, Mission Impossible Fallout, solid 4.5 out of 5, and we will see you guys next time. You're watching the Nerdpocalypse YouTube channel. Make sure you click that button to subscribe and check out our weekly podcast where we talk about movie, TV, news, tech, and weird stories from around the internet.